side was like 2% of our revenue. So like we did 600,000 this year. I could afford to cut out 2%. I'm willing to make that trade to get rid of 2% of my revenue so I can focus on maybe mulch. If you don't have anybody that's interested in the position out of your 7 people, I would do some self-reflecting on the position itself. Is it maybe the pay isn't high enough? Do I maybe have the wrong 7 people on my team? All right. So today we have Luke on with us. Luke, maybe share us, help everybody get up to speed, kind of like where you're at in business. Maybe take 30 seconds to give us a clear shot of that. And then, yeah, we can jump into the questions and see how I can help.
Yeah, awesome. So right now we have an average of 7 to 10 team members in the main season. That kind of fluctuates up and down. This year we finished at $800,000 revenue. In 2022, we did 235. 2023 was 455. And then this year was 800,000, like I say. So we've pretty much been doubling year over year. We are 35% maintenance and then about 65% projects to kind of get an idea. So we're pretty projects heavy. That's where a lot of our work comes in. But we do have a decent bit of maintenance routes going out. So far as office staff goes, we have one remote office lady that's over in Connecticut. So we're in Iowa. She's in Connecticut. The business operations as a whole, I pretty much am in charge of everything. So I don't have anybody else that's working with me. I mean, from estimates, invoices, scheduling, team meetings. I'm pretty much the everything guy. I have the field staff, but none of them are in leadership roles. So I pretty much do everything myself in that regard right now. But yeah, I mean, sir, is there anything else I should go into, or is that a pretty good idea?
Yeah, actually, you answered one of my questions because I wanted to see if it was recurring or project based. So you shared that. That was perfect. What, as far as services go, so you said that you do snow removal. As far as like the regular service during the majority time of the season, is it just simple services, or like are you doing sod, tree trimming, some of those more complex things?
Yeah, we do a decent bit. So we do a lot more of the complex. We will do sod. We'll do a little bit of smaller concrete jobs. We do some minor tree trimming stuff. We do underground downspout drainage, even like just lawn drainage work in general, like dry creek beds, French drains, things like that. We're pretty spread out. We do a lot of different stuff. We'll do patios, retaining walls, and that's one of the things that I'm working on going forward, is trying to, cut that down, simplify on what we're best at. But yeah, I'd say pretty much everything landscaping related except for, irrigation, landscape lighting, and then the bigger design build landscape jobs that have the outdoor kitchens. And we don't really get into that either. So
yeah. Okay. So that helps me out tremendously. So what's the long-term goal, Luke? Like fast forward 5 years from now, maybe 10 years from now, what do you want the business to look like? Are we talking like one big behemoth company, multiple locations? I know you put in there 10 million is the goal, but how do you want to get there?
Yeah, that's something I'm interested to talk to you with a little bit today. But my goal is ultimately what I'm thinking, because I've chewed on this a lot, is to have one main corporate location that's kind of like the hub for everything, and then have probably about 8 to 10 satellite locations off of that in different cities around the area, and have everything, they're kind of like umbilical cords to the corporate, and just scale each one of those to around something that a general manager can handle. So maybe 400,000 to 600,000, somewhere around, maybe a little bit more depending on what it is. But that's kind of the ultimate goal, to have one corporate and then satellite locations off of that, which will eventually ideally grow to a little bit more than just a basic satellite location. Maybe they'll end up expanding. That's kind of a future. That's past 5 years though.
Yeah. Okay. So ultimately you want to get out of like really the operational side of things, to my understanding, if this is kind of what we're mentioning, or is that where you excel tremendously and you would want to kind of be in a lot of the ops at that main location? Yeah. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I love operations, and I don't necessarily want to get out of it anytime soon. Right now, that's something I'm still trying to figure out to some degree. I'm betting, just as the business has grown, as I've changed in it, I would be all right taking more of a, kind of step back CEO role, or, being involved in the business, but not as much day-to-day operations when I get to that point. I don't know if it's answering your question or not though.
It is. I almost feel like maybe a regional manager role would work really well for you if you still want to be like involved with a lot of the operation stuff. Yeah. Okay, cool. I was just trying to kind of get where you were wanting to go and kind of paint that picture for me, so that way I can help kind of hopefully guide you to that. So I guess, yeah, in the short term of like maybe 12 to 24 months, what do you see are the biggest hurdles, or, I mean, we were talking a little bit before we hit record about like going to blue collar summit and like potentially not being able to step away just because of some systems. Like what things are you missing or lacking, or maybe the systems that need to be implemented in order for you to kind of step away from that? Like, what do you feel as though is your biggest pain point that I
Yeah,
can help with?
I understand what you're saying. Probably my ability to hire and train a manager type position, one of those that would work on the business with me. I do all right with hiring, field staff, and like we have a remote office lady and things like that. I'm pretty comfortable with that. But so far as hiring someone who's going to manage other people, it's just like I've been chewing on that a lot, and I don't understand exactly how to go about that, how to do it. I have some ideas so far as what I would go, this year, but that's definitely my biggest hurdle because I'm getting to the point where I'm kind of bursting at the seams for what I can manage on my own. Having everybody who's calling me throughout the day with the flat tire, or they ran over a irrigation head, or whatever the situation is. I'm getting all that stuff along with the scheduling and the estimates and a lot of the marketing, pretty much everything. So that I'd say to boil it down, hiring someone who is a general manager like position to help me run the business ultimately is probably the biggest hurdle that I just have never explored that area, and I'm just brand new to that.
Yeah. So I was in your shoes probably like 2 years ago, where I felt as though all the weight was on my shoulders. I knew everything in my brain. And it's like, how do I take what I know, give it to somebody and train them up? And in my mind, I was like, okay, if I had to sit somebody down and teach them on how to do sod and how to do tree trimming and how to run the day-to-day operations, it would easily be like 6 to 8 months before I could train somebody. So how long do you feel like it would take to train a general manager everything you know in your brain?
Yeah, right now with everything I know, realistically, it would probably take a year. It'd probably take an entire year of me just going through. I mean, all the little nuances and little details, and what notes to add in certain quotes, and what customers to do this extra thing for. Yeah, it would probably be about a year, I would say, and I could get them pretty close, but there would still be a few things that maybe they'd be lagging on.
Yeah. So, and that's the answer that I wanted to hear, which is not the greatest answer, right? Like, it's like, that's a very long time to be able to plug somebody into the system, train them. And literally, I mean, there's people that leave after a year, maybe two, right? So like by the time they're actually trained and profitable for the company, they're already having to leave. It's really hard to build a profitable business that way. So what we have to do, and what we were forced to do in our business, is our funnel was so wide. Like we did tree trimming, we did sod, we revamped flower beds, we did edging borders, we did planting, tree planting, bush planting, all of this stuff. And so what we had to do is start to strip away some of those complex services that generated revenue, good revenue, but like we didn't have that service year round, or it was somewhat hard to train and teach somebody, or it created like levels in the business. Like let's say sod, for example, right? Like, there's complexity with it. If you order a pallet of sod and you don't use it within a certain number of days, like that entire pallet's like ruined, right? And so like there's a lot of management involved. Now you got to like order it and like all of that stuff. You can't like mulch is easier. You just bulk order the mulch and just leave it in the yard, and then you just come and grab it. Like it's not a living organism that can die, right? So like if the goal is to have one main location with satellite locations, what I would recommend is start to look at simplifying those services that you're offering, especially if you're at a really good point right now where you could ideally train a general manager to take a lot of your operational stuff off of your plate. So that way it could open up to either, go sell more work or start a second location, and start to do more kind of regional manager stuff instead of getting sucked up in the day-to-day operations of like managing those like more complex jobs. So what we did is we really went down to like mowing, weed control, and then bush and bed service. That's it. And then mulch too. But like we got rid of all planting, right? We got rid of all sod, we got rid of all tree trimming. And the way that we did that is at the end of the year, we just printed off a report of all of the revenue we made. So you already shared with me that 35% of your revenue is recurring. The other, 65% is project-based. So it sounds like you are project-based heavy. What I would like to see it turn more towards is like maybe like 50% recurring and then 50% project-based, but the right projects, right? Because like I said, yeah, some of those jobs are a little bit complex, and to train a general manager would take way too long. So how do we get a 1-year training thing? Like how do we cut that down into like a fourth of that? How do we take somebody and plug them into our system, and within 90 days as a general manager, have them know exactly what they need to be doing, the services that they're supposed to be conducting, fully trained, and can like run with it now and really like help grow the business because they know all the aspects of the jobs that they, just like you said, there's so many minute details of like the invoices and like how to word things and everything. So I would say that's probably step number one. And what we did is we just printed off that sheet, and like I think it was like 60% of our revenue was mowing. I was like, okay, well, we're clearly not cutting that because that was like ton of it. The next one was like 35% weed control. I was like, all right, that's our second biggest category. We're going to leave that. And then we just went down the line. And when you got down to the end of the line, it was like sod was like 2% of our revenue. And I'm like, okay. So like we did 600,000 this year. This was like, 2 years ago, roughly like 600K. I'm like, I could afford to cut out 2% for me to not have to worry about like that whole training process of teaching somebody how to do sod and how to cut it and how to line it and how to fix sprinkler heads when we damage them. Like, I'm willing to make that trade to get rid of 2% of my revenue so I can focus on maybe, hey, what if we just did more upsells on mulch? That's an easier service. I could probably replace that with that 2%. Does that kind of make sense?
No, what you're saying is hitting really good. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
my biggest hesitation, I'd be curious to get your thought on it, because for me, for cutting some stuff out, like I guess to give you an example, rock installations and garden bed renovation stuff, that's a huge portion of our stuff. I mean, that's probably close to 50%. Just like somebody wants us to, they want to replace the rock in their garden beds with decorative rock, do a brick border, install, a few hydrangeas and some other decorative plants, and then install steppers going to their back shed. Stuff like that is stuff that we do a lot of. And if I was to cut all that out right away, I'd probably have to lay people off. And so I'm trying to think about how to there's got to be a way to kind of transition to that, maybe gently, where we can I can just put all marketing dollars towards mowing, fertilization, weed control. Like we have this garden bed maintenance program that's pretty good for us. What do you think about that? Like if somebody like me who has all my stuff kind of tied up in this complex work that is like very complex, and like a garden bed renovation is not something you got to order these plants in advance. Specialty rock is super hard to get, and once you use it, you can't use it anywhere else. If you have extra brick border, it's very hard for me to train people up to do that. But what do you think about that? If I have a huge portion of my services in areas like that?
Yeah, I wouldn't cut it out then. Like from the report that we're pulling, if that is our top three, like one of the top three, I'm probably not cutting it out, because that's what you've built your business on the last 3 to 4, 5 years. So like, let's take that. Okay, if it's paver patio setup and all that stuff, that's fine. We can do that. And if that's what we're getting 12 months out of the year, a lot of projects on and like big high ticket pricing, we just would need to simplify that. So how do we simplify that? We need to build a system around it. So instead of offering all different kinds of rock, what if we just allowed 3 types of rock? You have a lighter color, a medium color, and a dark color. That's it. Like if you take a step back and you say, okay, out of all the projects we've used, has there been rock that multiple people have been using? That like, oh yeah, like this is like the 3rd or 4th customer this year that's used this rock. Okay, that's probably going to be a good rock to use then, if more people like that. And so, because a lot of the times when you talk to these customers, they kind of know what they want, but some don't, right? Like, and us as our jobs is to allow them to guide them into the decisions. And so even with mulch, like for and a more simplified version, we offer mulch. We used to offer black, brown, and red. But what we found is that literally like 3% of customers use red in our area. It just is what it is. Like it's only 3%. And so why waste products sitting there and getting moldy in the yard? Just cut out the 3%. Like, why are we trying to tailor to 3% of the customers that want red? Let's just offer black and brown and focus on the 95% of people that actually pay our bills. And then again, there might be a customer or two, out of the month that are like, hey, I want red. Sorry, we don't offer red. Right. And, it just is what it is. I would do the same thing for the hardscaping side of things. Come up with 2 or 3 rock that you guys use. That's it. You're not going to make everybody happy, but you're tailoring towards the 90% of what people want, which is a rock pathway to their sidewalk or back patio, right? and you're still able to do that job, and you're not cutting out a ton of revenue. You're only cutting out, maybe 3 to 5% of those customers that maybe want a different rock. You know what I mean? And then really just simplifying the process around that. Like, how do we, like, if that's the service we get a lot of revenue from, we need to build a system around it, because we're not going to cut it. I wouldn't want you to cut it. Then now you're kind of potentially jeopardizing people's jobs and things like that. But how do we simplify it, make it easier, so that way the crews can get trained very quickly, like very, very quickly and profitable. And then if the general manager leaves, which it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, people come and go in the business. Okay, we need to take a new GM, plug them in within 90 days. They need to know what they're doing. And so how do we make our business not so complex where it takes a whole year to train somebody? How do we cut that down into a quarter of training?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, that's opening my mind up to this, because I think sometimes I look at simple as like dumbed down services that are super easy to do, but that's not necessarily. You're kind of saying it's more of, as long as it's standardized and there's, just like the Chick-fil-A menu or something, just simple stuff that they cut down to what everybody wants. And then, because like as you're saying that, even with, we probably have 90% of people that just do dyed brown mulch, and we don't really even have any black mulch either. So that's opening my mind up, because I think I just tend to look at it like, oh, a patio, that is, that's advanced, so we shouldn't do that. But you're kind of saying it's okay to leave it as long as there's like a system and procedure around it that's not, 100 steps long or something.
Yeah, 100%. If that's what your business is built from the last 3 to 4 years of a lot of project space. Now, again, eventually down the road, I would like to see you get to more of the recurring stuff. Projects are great. You can make great money doing paper patios. Trust me, great profit. That's you should, and that's part of the tool bag. But how do we shift over to more recurring revenue? Because that's going to allow you to really truly step away and not have to rely on, when you do hire a general manager, to always be pressuring them to like sell. You and I sell because we're the owners. But like sometimes people are more operational driven, where they're just like, hey, I got to get the list done. So it's like, can we get our revenue to more recurring base? So it's like, yeah, let's go out and do the paper patios. That pays for a lot of the bills. But now how do we sell them into like, hey, you need recurring weed control, or you need recurring mowing, and like now recurring upkeep on the flower beds, that we hopefully just created, and things like that with the hardscaping, rock border and stuff,
Okay. And so that maybe with my projects, that could be an opportunity to cross sell them into more recurring stuff. Is kind of what you're saying. Like, maybe I need to set up a system to, like, we still get those jobs. We're cross selling on the recurring services that we offer constantly. And maybe we even have like a card we hand the customer at the end of the job or something that sells them into, maintaining their new landscape, or here's our fertilization weed control program. Okay. That's making sense.
Yeah. And then your upsells each month, if you're not doing it already, once a month during the growing season, blasting an email out or a text to all of your customers. Hey, this month we're offering bush trimming, right? And then like maybe in the late spring, it's like, hey, this month we're offering mulch installations, and then we can blast that email out. And so again, we're trying to push to more recurring revenue services, in our database. So yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Makes a lot of sense. And then just as I go into this year, one of my main goals is, like you're saying, that makes a lot of sense to simplify. I'm going to be focusing on that a lot. And then I'm also going to be focusing on finding a general manager, like you're saying, who I can hire on, and I can put take a lot of stuff off my plate, even if it's more, simple, kind of tedious admin work that he can do. What do you think is a good way to go about that? Because right now, like I say, I run the business on my own. I can do it all. And I understand that it might take two of me to do what I do, or two hires to do what I do. But going into it, I have a tough time just hiring a GM and then just kind of like training him up from there. One of my issues is, I'm sorry, I'm going around so much here. I'm just thinking about this out loud. I don't have anybody inside my team who's necessarily a good pick to promote to general manager. A lot of really good guys, but they're content where they are. They like what they're doing, and they're not really interested in moving up, which I respect that. And they're awesome. So I think I have to hire somebody in from the outside. What would you say in my case would be the best way to go about that? Like, hire someone, pay them a little bit more, have them do like 50% office work, 50% field work, and then like 2026, I roll them over to a full-time general manager. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So that's a good question. It's a loaded question. There's a ton of different variables I can kind of go down. If you don't have anybody that's interested in the position out of your 7 people, I would do some self-reflecting on the position itself. Is it maybe the base pay for the position isn't high enough? Like, why do I have 7 people on my team that aren't interested? Do I maybe have the wrong 7 people on my team? Are they not A players? Like, how do we build a foundation of a career growth path inside of our organization? Well, we need the right people to want to grow, right? I'm not saying that you have the wrong people. I'm just saying, hey, let's take a step back and reflect, because I did the same thing. I rolled out a GM offer for my people and nobody was interested. And I said, okay, why is that? So I went and I pulled my go-getters that I know are A players. I'm like, hey, man, after the meeting today, what interests you? What didn't interest you? Like, and they told me, hey, we feel like on year 2, 3, or 4, that position is going to pay great. But in year 1, like, the pay wasn't good enough for me. Like, I can make over here on P4P, I can make 25, 30 an hour, but now you're going to pay me a base pay of a lower salary over here. Like, it's almost, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I need to put more skin in the game for them in year 1. And then I did that. And then all of a sudden I had 2 guys on my team that were interested. So just, reflect on that. Maybe the base pay needs to be increased a little bit. Like, maybe they're not, I don't know, whatever it is. Maybe you need to find money motivated like team members or whatever. But okay, so that's besides the point. Let's just assume that the salary and the bonuses are good and gravy. Like, anybody who's wants to grow a career path, like, it's very easy for them to be like, yes, I want to be a GM because it's going to pay me well and I'm going to get a lot, like, gain skill sets from it. It's like, okay, great. So from there, I will be the first to say that I've only trained 3 general managers, so I don't have the training process extremely dialed in yet. When I get to my 50th GM, I will have it way more dialed in. What I would say is really sit down and come up with like the big 3. Like, what is the big 3 tasks that a general manager should be doing? These are the things I need them to focus on. And in our organization, number 1 is sales. So you're taking somebody typically from the field and then you're pulling them up to a general manager. Their minds are in operations mode. They're not in sales mode. So we need to shift their mindset over to sales. So it's like, okay, well, when you don't have any work on your schedule on Friday, that doesn't mean you just go home. Like, we need to go put door hangers out. We need to like put yard signs out. We need to send an email to our list. Sales, it needs to be at the front of our forebrain when we're out doing a lawn. We need to be upselling like constantly. So I'd say like teaching them sales process. Obviously the hiring process is important, but typically you may want to wait to hand that off till the end, just because culture is really important. But obviously, like scheduling and routing, doing the actual services, they need to be trained up on that. So you would have like a checklist of all of those things that you would need to train a GM. I don't necessarily think from a GM standpoint that, hey, sit down and watch these videos is a good way to train somebody. I just don't. Like, realistically, I would have them, and I just have them shadow me for like 2 or 3 days. It's like, hey, I'm going to be scheduling and routing. You're going to watch me. I'm going to walk you through what I'm doing. And then literally tomorrow, you're going to be the one that's scheduling, and I'm going to train and teach you, right? Just like that one-on-one hands-on training is kind of what I have found to be most effective versus like, because by the time you sit there and you film videos or and then hand it off to them, like 6 months, a year from now, the software is different. I mean, if you're on Copilot or P4P, like these things are changing and it's like the videos are going to be outdated. And so like, I don't want to even waste my time building this whole training process for the software to change 6 to 12 months from now and look totally different. And the buttons are in different areas. So like a lot of it is really sitting down, doing a left seat, right seat kind of handoff trade-off of like, okay, here you go. You're going to watch me. And then I'm going to kind of hand it off to you. You know what I mean? That's the way that I have found to be most effective when training new general managers. As far as like choosing them, because I've been through 3, what I will tell you is what you want to look for is obviously the 3 basic ones, right? Like they got to show up to their shift every day. That's number 1. Their production needs to be good, their quality needs to be good. But outside of that, what you're wanting to look for is leadership ability. So in a team meeting, when you're going through complaints from customers and stuff like that, and one of your team member has a question, who is the person on the team that steps up, that explains to that person, oh, hey, if there were clippings left in the flower bed, like the way that you can clean it up better is like grabbing a rake and then like picking it up and putting it in a trash bag. Like you'll be good. So like the person that steps in and helps the other team member is somebody to me that like will have good leadership ability. Like the person that isn't afraid to compliment somebody like in a team meeting or like step in and give advice. Those are the kinds of people. Or like if there's a new team member kind of struggling and that person kind of steps in, is like, hey, here, let me show you how to do it. That's a really good indicator of like, oh, this person can lead somebody and like help somebody. Like that's what a general manager does. They lead and help people to make the most money on the team, to get them trained up, to finish their routes. And so the people with that kind of ability, what I have found are the guys that are solid, really solid. They can manage them, not only themselves, but also other people. I got a lot of good people on our team that manage themselves, but would not be good leaders. They just wouldn't. People wouldn't follow them or lead them. They can lead themselves. They can get here on work at time. They can crush budget hours. They can make a ton of money. But as far as leading people, they would not be a good candidate as much as they check the boxes for all those others. So really just thinking about the leadership side of things is what you would need in a general manager. If you're hiring outside of your organization, so out of those 7 people, it's a little bit hard to get that temperature gauge on people because you just don't know how they work. I mean, you could do reference checks, but then you would want to just lean into more of like, hey, has this person had a position in the past where they were a leader? If so, then yes, let me call their references and let me see how they were as a leader. That's probably the route I would go. It's like, oh yeah, I used to be a manager at the gas station. Okay, great. How many people were you over? Oh, I had a team of like 4 people. It's like, great. That's a perfect. Let me get the bosses, whoever they work for, direct report. And as long as that information lines up that they were above 4 people, hey, how was their leadership ability? Were they able to lead people? And like, as long as the reference come back good, I'd say you're probably making a good choice for hire. It's a little bit hard to dictate that outside of the organization just because you haven't seen it, but that's probably how I'd approach it.
Okay, that's making a lot of sense. You actually answered one of my questions there so far as what to look for. So leadership, then if I'm hiring from the outside, I want to see previous leadership experience and then call the reference. Yeah, it makes sense. To go back to the beginning a little bit when you're talking about like in my team, I was just curious a couple little details of how you handle this situation. So looking at my team, none of the team members are unprofitable or do bad work or anything. They're all great guys and they do a great job. They're not really interested in moving up, I think is the best way to put it. They're pretty happy where they're at. They don't want to take on more responsibility. I don't know. I'm gonna have to do some more digging on if that's really a good thing or if that's something that maybe I don't have A players and I might need to just, get some new people on board. What in that, I guess if you were in a case where you had people, like you were mentioning, you had some experience with that, maybe you have people who just aren't interested in moving up. Not that they're bad employees or anything, but they just like this idea of thinking outside the box and putting yard signs up and that type of headspace just isn't appealing to them. Is that something that I should maybe dig into further? Is that something I need to look at possibly hiring different people for? Is that something where maybe it says more about my leadership than anything? But what do you think? Do you have any more thoughts about that?
Yeah. So a good exercise is to figure out at some point, we do this every year, by the way. We don't do annual, or we do annual, but like it would be good if you went in on Monday morning when you get back with your team, give them all a sticky note and say, hey guys, I want you guys to write down your 5-year goals. What do you want to accomplish? Could be career driven. It could be personal driven. I don't care. I just want to know what you guys want to accomplish in life in the next 5 years. Give me 2 or 3 goals that you want to hit. And then from there, one person's going to say, hey, I want to buy a house. One person's going to be like, hey, I want to get married. Hey, okay, great. Now we have some data. Okay. Now I can align what they want with what I want. Because if you want to buy a house, great. So what do we have to do to buy a house? Well, we need a good track record of a good paying job. Check. You work here. We just need to keep you here. Okay. So how does that work? Show up every day, work hard. Okay, great. Now, how do we get to, buying a house, an FHA loan, 3.5% down on a $300,000 house? I don't know what the math on that is, but $10,000. Okay. How much do we have saved right now? Nothing. Okay, great. So we need to put for the next 12 months, like $800 away every month. How do we do that? Okay. Is what you're making right now going to be able to support that? No? Okay, so why are we not jumping for the GM role? Right? You see how I'm like I'm like we need to figure out what they want. We know what you want, which is 10 million multi-locations. What do they want? And how do I line that as a leader to move them in there? Now, it very well might be that you have 7 people on your team that are maybe B players that don't want are fine with renting at where they're at, and they're just content, and that's fine. There's people we need those kind of worker bees to get the jobs done. We do, but to build a long-term scalable business and a culture of constant growth and improving ourselves and pushing the needle forward, we need to go out and recruit people that want to grow. And I had a really hard conversation. Actually, my wife's sister, her name's Lisa. She's like a high up executive in this medical company, and she's over like 45 people. It's crazy. And she has like 8 or 10 direct reports, but then they have reports, and she's over like 45, 50 people. And I'm like, all right, so she knows something about like leading people. And I remember sitting her on the porch, sitting there one day, and I'm like, Lisa, I got about 7 to 10 guys on my team. I'm trying to push them to get licensed in and the weed control side of things, because I want to hand that responsibility off to somebody, so that way I can go build the business and not always be the guy spraying weeds and stuff like that, right? And I was like, I told them about it. I'm trying to sell it to them that they can make more money if they get licensed and all this stuff. And a lot of people raise their hand and they're like, yeah, I want to do it, Will, but then they don't open the book, they don't study, they don't do the work. And I'm like, what do you recommend? And she was like, Will, she's like, it sounds like you got the wrong people. She's like, you got to go out and find the ones that want to open the book and get the job done. And it hit me. It went from my head to my heart. And I'm like, you know what? She's right. And it was somewhat like, humbling, because I'm like, no, she's absolutely right. I need to find the right people that want to grow in this type of environment. So what did I do? I go out the next day and like, no, but like slowly over time, we improved our systems, improved our hiring, improved our reference checks, improved the quality of candidate that we're hiring. And then at the end of each year, because we only have so much work, we kind of like the guys that like maybe didn't show up for their shifts or didn't, kind of slowly but surely kind of weeded out. And then over time, it just got better. You know what I mean? And now I got guys that are getting licensed. I got a new general manager that's building his own location. And it's like, and it all came down to like, ideally just leadership and me.
Makes sense. Yeah, no, that's super helpful. I like that stuff. Yeah. So kind of on that note, just as your personal, a note on your personal growth over the past few years, do you have anything that pops up in your mind as stuff you've really had to work on, like yourself personally, in order to lead like the organization you have and to have these people not necessarily keep them motivated, but just to be well respected enough to take care of people? I guess just leadership or personal qualities that you've really had like have been like a real pain point that you've had to work on. You didn't even know you had to work on them until you got to where you are right now.
Yeah, this is a really good question, and I don't know who this will help, but obviously, so I have a military background. I was a paratrooper in the Army, jumped out of airplanes, did all that stuff, right? IT background. And that was the type of environment that I came from. For 6 years, like people would yell at you and scream at you and like force you into being a leader. Like that's the rank of the military. Like if they have a higher rank, they tell you what to do and you need to do it. And so that was my leadership, what I was used to. And that's what I knew. Like somebody yells at me, I gotta do it. But when you transition into people, because we're like, that's all business is people. And we have to care about each other and treat each other like we would want to be treated. And it sounds so weirdly simple, but what I learned in my early days was I was leading as like a military person, and that was not at all healthy environment. And so transitioning to more of a, person out there in the front holding the flag versus like the one on the side yelling at everybody is kind of the leadership mode that I had to kind of switch to. And so I think generally what I struggle with is like showing empathy. The experiences in my life have been very hard. Like I was going to say hardcore, but that sounds so like weird. Like I deployed to Iraq. I was in a combat zone. Like there would be sirens that go off and you have to run to a bunker with your loaded M4 carbine, right? Like that's what I have been around before. And so to me, a small problem at work is like, okay, just get over it. Like fix this. Like, you know what I mean? And like, it's so minuscule, but I can't dismiss people's feelings. And I, as a leader, have really learned and am getting better at showing, what's the word I'm looking for? Not like, I don't think it's empathy, but like giving more grace, showing more grace. When somebody has a flat tire in the morning, showing more grace instead of being like, well, you're not here on time, right? Oh man, dude, I'm so sorry. Luckily you didn't get in the car and drive it and something happened to you. Like that, I'm grateful for that, you know? And even though you came in, you know, an hour or two late, you still got here safely. That's what matters. Hey, let's just, you know, we'll get past it. Hope it doesn't happen, you know, hopefully it doesn't happen again. If it does, maybe just check our tires like that evening, or, you know what I mean? Like just like showing more grace for me was really important. Also what I think this is just a good rule of thumb for most leaders. Like we should never, behind closed doors, and this is me being vulnerable, I think I have somewhat of like anger, sometimes problems, right? Like or maybe a high temper. Like when I'm in front of people, like I'm good. Like I can keep my composure, but there are times where I don't know if it's like the food I eat, I just get irritable sometimes. I just get irritable, and then one little thing will like set me off, right? But like as a leader in front of people, we should never lose our temper ever. And we should never be ever raising our voice in front of our team ever. I did one time and I lost the respect for all of my team. It was like summertime and I had like, there was like 3 people out of the 7 that weren't showing up and I was getting really mad. And this was like the first like 2 or 3 years in business when I was still learning. And I remember one morning I went out for a team meeting and I was really mad. And I like basically was yelling at everybody. And again, military mindset, that's just what I'm used to. Everybody gets yelled at, right? But the minute I did that, I lost the respect for all of my team and it ruined my credibility. And I was like, okay, duly noted. I will never do that again. You and I, just like the leader in the room should never be the one that loses his composure. Think about it. The president of the United States, who was that George W. Bush when he was sitting in the classroom reading those kids a book on September 11th when the planes hit the tower. And you could literally go back and watch that video. And I'm getting like goosebumps, like just thinking about it, because this is the type of leader that person was, right? Like his secret agent, like literally walked over, leaned over, whispered in his ear, like, we have something crazy going on, like whatever it is. Hey, there have been planes that just hit a building, or we have like high level priority, something going on right now. And he literally went back, kept his composure, finished the story of the book, and then handled the situation when literally the United States was getting attacked. You know what I mean? And so like versus like freaking out or like just keeping the composure, I would say as a leader, like we must do. And that I would say would be one of the biggest things for me at all times. Truck gets into an accident, keep your composure. Hey, did anybody get hurt? No? Great. Guess what? All trucks and all mowers are replaceable, but people aren't. That's what I care about more. I don't care if we got into a car accident. Like, do I want it to happen again? No. But are we all safe? Did anybody get injured? Okay, no. Good. All right, we're good. We'll handle it through insurance. It is what it is. You know what I mean? Just trying to keep that kind of level headed as a leader.
Okay. That's helping me out a lot. That's making sense. I'm thinking through this as you're saying that. The examples you gave really open up my mind a lot to that. So with that in account, you know, at the same time, you have to be shrewd too. So there are certain things that are unacceptable. I guess I'm speaking from my experience, because this year I gave a couple people a few chances when I probably shouldn't have, and they ended up causing a lot more damage inside the company. Like one guy, you know, he lost his friend, a bad situation. But then after that, he was just kind of, he wasn't there. He wasn't showing up on times in the morning. He wasn't doing a good job. And I kept on giving him grace. Same thing with another guy, you know, who had damaged a truck pretty bad. And I kind of looked over it like, hey man, it happens, you know, but I know, and I guess a lot of this stuff is just case by case. There's no like blanket statement to put on it. I understand that. But what's your way of managing that? Because I found that too. Like when I lose my temper, people don't respond well. It never goes well. Like, this doesn't matter what it is. It's always bad, whether, you know, phone call, text message, like in person. Like, they experience me more than they listen to me. And when my heart's in a bad place, they don't like that. They don't respond well. But what's your way to manage that? Because sometimes you do have to, I don't want to say lay down the hammer, but sometimes it is like pretty serious, and you have to fire somebody, or you know, they slept through their alarm, and it's not just something where it's like a, you know, hey, I understand it happened. It's more like, you know, that's a big deal now. Like, I'm just trying to pick your brain on like how you figure out the line there.
Yeah, just be consistent with it. So be very clear in your handbook policy. Be very clear in your orientation process. So I'm going to take a simple and easy one, but let's just say you've got a good team member, been with you for a year and a half, going through some personal problems. Okay, I'll work with you for a little bit, for maybe a month or so, but then he's constantly calling off at least once a week, or late once a week, twice a week for the next like 4 to 6 weeks. And it's like, it's becoming a problem. It's like, hey, I know you're going through some things, but as unfortunate, like we as leaders, our job is to also hold a line. And so as long as we're clear on what the expectations are and what fireable offenses are, which is constant call-offs, constant tardies, we have to hold the standard. As much as we care and we love our people and our team and we want to see them succeed, because I can tell you care through that statement. The other way that we care for our go-getters, our top 25% of the people, is by actually firing a low performer that's not doing what we're saying is required. Otherwise, we look like pushovers, and there's going to be internal talk of like, oh, Luke, you know, allows so-and-so to not show up for a shift, so that's acceptable. But at the same time, yeah, we have to hold the line. So just being clear on what that is. I failed to do that for our second general manager. I did not have fireable offenses, and I found myself in the same spot you were in, of like being like, well, and literally conversations behind closed doors with, you know, my wife. I'm like, hey, I kind of need to let this person go. Like, I've had that, I had that conversation multiple times behind closed doors, and eventually, obviously, the relationship went separate ways. But like, it should have been like 3 months prior than when it actually did. But it was because I failed as a leader to be like, hey, if you're not hitting these KPIs and we sit down and it's still in the red, if we're still in the red category, which means you're failing, if for consecutive weeks, that's it. Like, whether it's you or any other GM, you're not meeting the requirements, you're going to have to go. And I'm here to help and coach you to show you how to fix those, but it's ultimately up to you. If you don't fix them, you as a leader have to figure it out. I can't hold their hand for everything, you know. But yeah, just holding the line, firing it unfortunately, as unfortunate. It's funny actually bring this up, because Larissa and I were having this conversation just recently, of in the beginning days, like our first 3 years, we cared about our team so much. Dude, one of our guys didn't have a vehicle, and we drove him home every day for work for like 30 minutes away. That's how much we cared about our guys. He's like, yeah, his car was like for like a week or two, like out of commission, and we literally would drive him home. Like, and I'm like, man, I would never be able to have the time to do that in today's, because I'm just so busy. But like, we really went the extra mile. But there just comes a time where you can't, you know, overextend yourself, you know?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That's cleared up. Yeah, I don't know how we're doing. I want to be respectful of your time, so just let me know when we got to go. But I was going to ask kind of an overarching question about, as I scale this business up, you know, and I have the corporate location and I have multiple locations around it. I understand we could get way into the weeds on this, so I'm kind of just trying to pick your brain so far as like general advice. Is there anything in your experience scaling that's really going to stand out to me when I'm doing that? I know hiring managers is going to be a big thing. I'm going to move to like a more of a regional manager type position. In that case, would you recommend like one main call center at corporate that would take all the calls from every location there? Let me think. Just so far as that process goes in general, do you think, does that sound like a good idea to have one corporate where kind of like training happens at corporate? Maybe that's where most general managers are pulled from corporate. You know, everything kind of starts there, and then the satellite locations are more or less an umbilical cord off of corporate. Am I looking at this the right way?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's similarly to what we're building out. So we have our like headquarters property just north of us, but that's where we ideally are doing all of the office training. So like when we hire a new office person, they have to come to that location for 30 days before working remote and like going back to their house, right? Which limits the amount of people that we can maybe hire just because of geographical location. But for us, it's really important to keep the culture and like what we want. Same thing for GMs. They may I haven't fully dialed that in yet, but ideally, I think there is some shadowing that needs to go on with that, whether that's a shadowing at the main location or they go out and they shadow a GM for another location that's running out of the storage units. And they like, what does a day look like as a GM? It's like, okay, well, team meeting in the morning, go out, do estimates, do some jobs, like, something built around that nature. But yeah, I think what you're wanting to accomplish at 10 million, multi-location is going to probably be the best because of geographical like boundary lines, right? Like if you're building a 10 million location, you are going to need locations that they can meet up outside of just the main one, unless for whatever reason your area is super compact, which is super rare. But yeah, I think you're definitely thinking the right way. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, cool, awesome, that's good to know. And then kind of go into more some like operational stuff for team meetings. I haven't done a great job with team meetings so far. I have done them consistently, which I guess is the important part. But what I have is kind of like Monday morning is the heavy stuff. That's like the bulk of the meeting. Maybe we'll go through, some overarching business stuff in Monday's meeting, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, those are just going to be like basic team meetings so far as, just real basic operational stuff, jobs, reminders, things like that. And then we'll have like 4 to 8 offsite meetings where we'll go out to either a restaurant, we'll have like bagels at the shop, we'll go bowling or things like that. Am I thinking about that the right way for team meetings, or what have you found that's worked out best?
How many minutes a day are you spending? So on Monday, how long is the team meeting? And then on Tuesday, how long is the team meeting? Wednesday?
And the Monday thing is something I'm introducing this year. So they've all kind of been the same length the past couple of years. But I would say we probably spend maybe 10 minutes a day in the meeting. Just some real we stand in a circle, real basic stuff. I'll bring stuff up. I'll let them throw stuff at me if they have things on their mind.
Yeah. Okay. So for us, off the top of my head, I think everyday team meetings, I don't know if you would need to do it every day. There are things that you need to communicate to your team each day, like, with certain schedules and stuff, but sometimes we'll just handle that through like our WhatsApp chat or something like that. What we do is we do one meeting on Mondays, which typically range from like 10 minutes to like max maybe 20. Like we don't want it to be more than 20 minutes. We get all the information out for the week on Monday, and then Tuesday through Friday, they're like non-office days. So what that allows the crew is a little bit more independence, where if they want to come in a little early for their shift, which honestly, all of our guys do because they're go-getters and A players, they literally sometimes get there to work before some of us do. And they'll load up their truck, they'll roll out Tuesday through Friday. And that allows them to get a jump start on their day, get off sooner, stuff like that. When you start to put team meetings every day, it kind of, I think from a culture standpoint would be really, really good, but I think it might be a little overkill to do it every single day. Maybe I think Mike with Augusta, they do like twice a week. I think they do one on Monday and one on Friday, but figure out kind of what works well for you, but from a payroll perspective and a P&L perspective, 10 minutes, let's just call it 10 minutes times 7 guys, 5 days a week is a lot of time. I don't want to like keep them from making money, right? Like out on the routes and having to keep them around for a team meeting. So instead, I would just do maybe like a 10, max 20 on Monday, one time, have all 7 of them there. And then the somewhat problem with that is like you might have a guy that's sick or something, so you got to relay the messages to them. But it's just a little bit easier. It's less manual adjustments on P for team meetings and stuff like that. Is kind of how we handle that. But yeah, I think you've got it. And then typically what we do in our team meetings, our structure is like what's going well. And typically that's when we read off like 5-star Google reviews. If anybody got a compliment, hey, these are things that like we're doing well. And then this is the stuff we need to improve on. And then yeah, any updates we read through yellow slips. We go around the horn, and we call it the horn, but basically say one thing we're grateful for to start our week off right. with gratitude. So that's how we structure typically our team meetings. I don't know if that helps.
But. No, that actually helps out a lot. You kind of opened up my mind there, because I find a lot of times, even through those meetings throughout the week, we're not really getting into any meaty stuff. A lot of times it's just kind of really simple stuff that could all be condensed into Monday's meeting. So yeah. And I noticed that too. Like, a lot of guys are there 20 minutes early, but they have to kind of wait around for the team meeting, and that's just burning. Like, at that point, you're talking like a half hour at a time that's just burned.
Yeah, and then I've got like 5 more minutes left down here, Luke, so we can jump into any last minute questions. But what I would say on top of that is what you can do to help kind of create more of a leadership buy-in is when you go in on Monday, give them the option. Let them feel like they're in control, right? Obviously, you and I know what's maybe best is like maybe just do 1 team meeting or 2 team meetings. Just be like, hey guys, what do you think? So this is a scenario. We can either do team meetings every day for like 10 minutes, or would you guys rather do just 1 team meeting where we give out all the key updates for the week on Mondays? And let them decide. Hey, let's take a vote. And then they feel more in control and can put, you do input with what goes around and the changes that come out, versus you coming out on Monday and just be like, hey guys, this is what it's going to be. That you creating more of buy-in like that will help culture and morale and stuff like that too. And then again, you being like the book Sell or Be Sold, if we're good leaders and we could sell it why the once a week would be better, but it's good to have feedback from the crews. And who knows, maybe they really like the daily thing. And if all of them are voting like, no, Luke, we want to do it every day, then maybe do it every day. Maybe for them and what the information you're giving them is valuable. Or they may be like, no, I'd rather be out making money on P4P instead of sitting in a team meeting and waiting Tuesday through Friday. So let's just do it one time a day. So that way I can be out working the other 4 days.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. And then I got another question, just going to segue quick into winter services. So right now what we do is we offer snow removal, and we have like an assurance fee attached to it. So where we get paid every month, either way, like a subscription thing from December, January, February. That does pretty well for us. I was wondering I guess you don't have as much snow in your market, but what you think about a model like that, and then just winter work in general. That's always been a hurdle around here, because we get just enough snow in Iowa where in order to take care of our customers, we kind of have to do it. But it's also not enough to really make any money, especially when you get the money in like snow blowers. We only do residential. We don't do any commercial snow, just because that's a lot of overhead and a lot of pain. But otherwise in wintertime, I find myself just kind of scraping together jobs. Like right now, we're doing a job for an electric company, cleaning up telephone poles. We're doing another like huge brush clearing job. Not even because I like that kind of stuff, but just to get us through. Do you have any, what do you think about winter? You've had to have thought about that. What do you think is a good way to go about that?
So I think if you can sell the insurance thing, where whether it snows or not, they're still paying, is phenomenal.
Okay.
That I would lean into that. And you said that you're able to do it, sell that as a package that way. That makes a ton of sense to me. I like it because that'll help retain some of your team at least through the winter, help supplement some of that. I think you doing maybe a few off jobs is okay. I think that's fine. That would work. It's tough. I mean, we're seasonal down here in Texas too, so we work I think 9 months out of the year, and then we don't get much snow, but we just go to winter services. But we do only retain maybe like 60% of our people, but we also go to biweekly. So it's like even less now, because normally we're weekly in the winter or summer. What I would say is at the end of the day, if you could figure out a model that you can retain the top at least 1/3 of your team through the winter, that's good. Because what you'll do, it's almost like a siphoning process in a weird way, right? Like not a siphoning process. What's the word I'm looking for? It's like you're refreshing each year, right? Like you're cutting out the waste, you're cutting out for sure in like late fall, probably your lowest performers, like the lowest 1/3 of your team, the guys that don't show up or get a lot of complaints or don't follow direction well, but you still kind of needed them in the busier season. That's when you start to kind of like filter out those guys in like late fall. And then obviously once winter rolls around, then you got to kind of, some decent team members you might have to leave, but at least you can retain your core guys, right? If you could figure out a way to do that, which it sounds like you already are with that insurance policy and the snow removal, I would say that that's very, very good. That's very, very good. I know there's some guys that will like shut down their business and close completely seasonally, but I always think it's best if you can keep your A players, year round, and that way you have them for the spring rush and can hit the ground running, that they'll be your trainers. They'll train the new guys coming in the spring. That'll make your life way easier in the spring instead of having to reset a whole new team, if that kind of makes sense. So
no, yeah, making a lot of sense. Nope, and that helps me that you like that assurance fee, because this is the first year we've done it and we've got a huge bite on it. So I don't see any reason why we can't, push that going forward. So yeah, cool.
yeah, and even if you break even in the winter, honestly, it sounds weird, but I mean, we basically do we do enough winter services in the winter to basically cover our overhead costs, and I'm okay with that, because the other 9 months out of the year we're crushing it. And for me to go out and like sell weird one-off jobs and stuff like that, like I could, but I'd rather save all of my energy and efforts to work 12 14-hour days in March, April, May, June, and July, like when it's like super super busy and I can really make a ton of like work. You know what I mean? Versus like the winter time. Cause we used to do that, dude. We used to like do a ton of flyers in the wintertime and leaf cleanup. But like the return on it is not as good as it is in the summer when things are growing in the spring. So like I would rather pour all my energy out when it matters most. And then in the wintertime, kind of like, again, retain our top quality team, refine our systems, figure out our processes, and then get ready to ramp up for the next year, is kind of like my thought process on it. I know some guys are like, yeah, let's grind year round, but realistically for me and my energy levels, it's just not really feasible, right? Like I need to reset and recharge. That's why I love the lawn care industry. It's almost like we take like a knee in the wintertime, reset. Okay, let's reflect on the year. What went well, what didn't go well, and what do we need to change for spring rush next year? And I think that's a good mindset. And if you figure out a way to retain your top percentage of players, you're good to go. I think that sounds like a great idea with the insurance policy.
Awesome.
I haven't heard that one. That's good. I like it.
A little bit difficult to sell, but yeah, we're getting it kind of more like an insurance policy for snow. So
yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, that is all the time I got, Luke. I really appreciate you jumping on. You had some really good questions, man. I think this is going to help a lot of people. So I really appreciate you jumping on.
Man, it was great. Thank you, Will. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Stay warm out there.
Sounds good. You too. Take care.
I'll see ya.
Bye-bye.